Daniel Harris had always been the kind of man who controlled every part of his life: his career, his image, his family. To neighbors and friends, he was the perfect suburban husband, a man who coached his daughter's soccer teams, hosted neighborhood barbecues, and drove a polished black BMW that always seemed spotless. But perfection, as often happens, was just the surface. Behind the walls of the neatly trimmed house on Willow Creek Lane, Daniel's marriage was crumbling. For months, his wife Sarah had watched the slow unraveling. It wasn't sudden. It was in the small things, the late nights at work that lasted longer than usual, the way he stopped kissing her goodbye in the mornings, the way his eyes no longer met hers at the dinner table. Friends noticed too. At parties, Daniel stood off to the side, his mind elsewhere. Sarah told herself it was stress, work pressure, midlife burnout. Anything but what she truly feared, that he had stopped loving her. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a warm Sunday evening in August 2022, just after the girls had gone to bed. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, his face unreadable, his voice flat. He told Sarah it was over, not in anger, not in tears, just cold and certain. He said he didn't see a future with her anymore. He wanted a divorce. She remembered the moment clearly, not just what he said, but how he said it, as if the decision had been made long before, as if he had been waiting for the right moment to say it out loud, that he didn't wait for her reaction. He stood up, walked into the bedroom, and began packing. Not much, just a small overnight bag, a few clothes, his laptop, and his passport. When Sarah asked him where he was going, he simply said, "I need space." At exactly 9:13 p.m., Daniel walked out of the front door. The sound of the BMW engine starting up echoed down the quiet street. His taillights faded into the night. Sarah stood at the window, watching, paralyzed by shock. She didn't know it yet, but that was the last time she would ever see her husband alive. The next morning, the phone call came. Daniel's car had been found. The words rang in her ears: accident, fatal, immediate death. He had crashed into a tree on a back road over 20 miles from their home. No explanation. No understanding of why he had been there. Authorities said it looked like he had lost control, but even in her grief, something inside Sarah felt wrong. Daniel wasn't reckless. He wasn't impulsive. He planned every part of his life. So why had he driven that far into the countryside in the middle of the night? Why hadn't he called? And why, after all these years, did she feel like she barely knew the man who had just left her forever? At the funeral, friends whispered behind her back. Some said Daniel had been seeing someone else. Others believed stress pushed him too far. But as Sarah stood at his grave, she felt only one thing: numbness. She had spent years sleeping beside him, yet now standing there, she realized she didn't understand who Daniel Harris truly was. The tragedy seemed simple. A man leaves his wife, drives into the night, and dies in a tragic accident. But that was only the beginning. The morning Daniel's body was found, police arrived at the scene expecting a typical car crash. From a distance, it looked like just another tragic accident. His black BMW had slammed into a large oak tree on a narrow, rural backroad miles from any main highway. The front of the car was destroyed, glass shattered, metal crumpled. The impact had been severe. Daniel had died instantly, according to the first responders. But as investigators stepped closer, small details started to raise doubts. The first sign was the road itself. The stretch where Daniel crashed was straight, flat, and clear. There were no sharp turns, no signs of rain or fog that night. More importantly, there were no skid marks on the asphalt. No indication that Daniel had tried to brake or swerve. It was as if he had driven directly off the road at full speed, heading straight for the tree without hesitation. Inside the car, the strangeness deepened. Daniel's seatbelt was not torn or frayed as in most crashes. It had been cut, cleanly. Investigators noted the straight, smooth edge of the severed strap. It wasn't something that could happen from impact alone. Someone or something had sliced it deliberately. This detail alone shifted the mood among detectives. An accident? Perhaps. But now the question lingered. Did Daniel free himself? Or had someone else done it? His phone, expected to be in the vehicle, was missing. His wallet, oddly enough, remained untouched in his pants pocket. Cash, credit cards, everything still there. That ruled out robbery. His overnight bag was still in the back seat, half unzipped, clothes folded neatly. Nothing seemed stolen. Officers walked the area, looking for anything unusual, but the road was empty. No tire tracks led to the crash from another vehicle. No footprints nearby. It appeared Daniel had been completely alone. Forensic examiners did a toxicology report, expecting perhaps alcohol or drugs to explain why a cautious man like Daniel would drive off the road. But the results came back clean. No substances in his system. His death was ruled blunt force trauma, with no signs of prior injury. Meanwhile, Daniel's brother, Matt, was demanding answers. He had arrived at the scene before police had even finished their initial report. He kept insisting to officers that Daniel wasn't the kind of man to make a reckless mistake. Matt told detectives that in the weeks leading up to his death, Daniel had become unusually anxious, telling him cryptic things like, "I can't fix this, and I'm running out of time." Matt believed Daniel had been afraid of something. Or someone died at the funeral, as friends spoke softly about how tragic and sudden Daniel's death was. Sarah Harris's reaction stood out. Instead of grief, she seemed detached, calm, cold, even. She spoke little to guests, avoiding long conversations, offering only short thanks. One neighbor later told police that Sarah had said something strange during the service, something that haunted the investigation later. She had reportedly told a friend, "I knew this would happen. I knew he wouldn't come back." Detectives now had questions that went beyond the crash itself. Why was Daniel so far from home that night? Why was his seatbelt cut? Why was his phone missing while his wallet remained? And why did his wife seem so certain he wouldn't return? As the small town mourned, police began to piece together what little evidence they had. But in the back of every investigator's mind, a chilling thought began to grow. This hadn't been an accident. It had been something else entirely. Asterisk. In the days after Daniel's funeral, investigators knew they were dealing with more than a simple car accident. His missing phone, the cut seatbelt, and the lack of skid marks all pointed toward something deliberate. But without solid proof, all they had were theories. To find answers, detectives focused on Daniel's final movements. They traced the route of his BMW using local security cameras and highway toll footage, hoping to map his journey. What they found left them with more questions than answers. At exactly 9:13 p.m., Daniel's car was captured leaving his neighborhood, matching the time his wife, Sarah, said he had left home. From there, his BMW appeared on 2 traffic cameras heading south. But after that, Daniel's car seemed to vanish. No more cameras picked up his license plate. He didn't stop at gas stations, use his credit cards, or withdraw any money. It was as if he had driven off the grid. This unexplained gap lasted nearly 6 hours. At 3:45 a.m., a private security camera on a remote farm finally captured his car again. His BMW was seen speeding down a narrow country road, the same one where he would be found dead minutes later. Investigators noted that the road Daniel was driving on wasn't a shortcut to anywhere. It was an isolated route, leading deeper into rural fields and ending near a patch of abandoned farmland. People didn't just pass through there. They went there on purpose. Where had Daniel been all that time? Determined to find out, detectives canvassed the area near where his car had disappeared from cameras. About 25 miles from the crash site, They found something unexpected: a cheap roadside motel. Records showed that Daniel had checked into the motel just after 10 p.m. the night he left home. The clerk on duty remembered him. Sadi looked nervous, kept looking over his shoulder, but Daniel hadn't been alone. Security footage from the motel's parking lot revealed Daniel arriving in his BMW, parking near a side entrance. He got out carrying his small overnight bag. Moments later, a figure appeared, a woman wearing a large hoodie with the hood pulled tightly around her face. The cameras weren't clear enough to see her features. She followed Daniel inside. Both of them went to a room near the back of the building. The woman never checked in separately. There was no record of her being there. What happened in that motel room, no one could say. Daniel stayed for nearly 5 hours. Then, around 3:30 a.m., his car was seen leaving the motel lot. But this time, he was alone. The woman didn't leave with him. No one saw her exit the motel. Her identity remained a mystery. When police examined the motel room, it was clean, sheets undisturbed. No personal belongings left behind. But in the trash can, they found something odd: the broken casing of a disposable phone, the kind often used for temporary or untraceable communication. Detectives now wondered if Daniel had been meeting someone in secret. But why? And what had happened in those missing hours that led him to a remote road at 4 a.m.? At this stage, the investigation hit a wall. The mystery woman was never found. No fingerprints, no surveillance leads, no witnesses. The last 6 hours of Daniel Harris's life remained a black hole, and somewhere inside that black hole was the answer to why he died. With the motel mystery unsolved, and no sign of the unknown woman, investigators turned to Daniel's financial records, hoping to uncover a motive hidden in numbers. His banking activity over the last 3 months told a story no one in his family had known. Daniel had been quietly withdrawing large sums of money. It started with small amounts: $500 here, $1,000 there. But as the weeks passed, the withdrawals grew larger and more frequent. In total, over $45,000 in cash had vanished from his accounts. Curiously, Daniel hadn't used his cards for any large purchases. There were no signs of luxury spending, no unexplained shopping sprees. He had simply taken the money out in cash, and apparently kept it with him. Investigators wondered if the mystery woman had something to do with it. Had Daniel been paying her, or paying someone else? If so, why? A closer look at Daniel's transaction history revealed another troubling detail. There were several wire transfers from his personal accounts to 2 bank accounts that couldn't be traced. These accounts led to offshore banks registered under fake business names. When forensic accountants attempted to follow the money trail, it hit a dead end. Whatever Daniel had been involved in, he had gone to great lengths to hide it. Sarah claimed she knew nothing about her husband's missing money. She said Daniel handled all their finances and that she hadn't noticed any changes in their accounts. But police soon discovered that just 2 weeks before Daniel's death, Sarah had quietly paid off over $30,000 in credit card debt. She had made the payments in cash, walking into local branches to clear her balances. When detectives confronted Sarah about where the money came from, she gave a simple explanation: Daniel had given it to her. He had told her to pay off her debts before things changed. Beyond that, she said she didn't ask questions. Investigators noted her answer, but couldn't prove any wrongdoing. Daniel's co-workers were interviewed next. They described him as tense in the weeks before his death. He had stopped joining office meetings and seemed paranoid, often checking windows and door locks. One co-worker recalled Daniel mentioning that he felt followed. He had told her, "Someone is after me, but I don't know why." His behavior suggested fear, but no one knew who or what he feared. Detectives now considered the possibility of blackmail. Had Daniel been forced to withdraw money to pay someone? Was the mystery woman connected to that? Or had he been hiding the money for some other reason? Every possibility led to the same dead end that, as police tried to unravel the financial puzzle. Forensics revisited Daniel's car. The missing phone remained a critical piece of the mystery. Investigators believed that whatever Daniel was hiding, evidence of it might have been inside that phone. But despite months of searching fields and roadsides near the crash site, the device was never recovered, with no evidence of a crime, no signs of forced entry in the motel, and no proof of who the mystery woman was. The case was starting to fade from public attention. But for detectives, one fact remained clear: Daniel Harris had been preparing for something. Moving money, acting paranoid, and keeping secrets. He hadn't just left his wife that night. He had been running from something or someone and in the end, whatever he had tried to escape caught up with him on that lonely road. 3 months after Daniel Harris was buried, the case had gone quiet. Officially, his death was still listed as a car accident, but everyone involved knew that label meant nothing. There were too many questions, too many gaps, and too many secrets. Detectives kept returning to the missing phone, believing it held the answers. Without it, the investigation felt stuck. Then, one cold November morning, something changed. An envelope arrived at the local police station. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in block letters. It contained just one sentence: "Look inside the tree." There was no explanation, no signature. Investigators immediately returned to the crash site. They examined the massive oak tree Daniel's car had hit. After hours of searching, they found it. Deep inside a hollow section of the trunk, hidden behind layers of bark, lay a small object wrapped in cloth. It was Daniel's missing phone. The phone was water damaged but salvageable. After careful data recovery, detectives accessed Daniel's last messages. What they found disturbed them. In the final hours before his death, Daniel had sent multiple messages to an unknown number. They weren't long conversations, just short, desperate phrases sent again and again. "Is it done? Do I still have time? Please answer." Then silence. The last message had been sent just 2 hours before. The crash, whoever he had been messaging, never responded. The phone number was untraceable, registered to a disposable burner phone. It was clear now. Daniel hadn't been lost that night. He hadn't taken a wrong turn. He had been waiting for something. Or someone. Detectives theorized that Daniel had hidden the phone himself. But why? Perhaps he knew whoever was following him might search the car after the crash. Perhaps he had hoped someone would find the phone later and discover the truth. Investigators reopened their search into the mystery woman at the motel, but after months gone, she had vanished. No fingerprints, no sightings, no financial traces. It was as if she had never existed. Without her, the case once again slowed to a halt. Meanwhile, Sarah Harris sold the family home and moved away with her daughters. She changed her last name and cut ties with Daniel's relatives. She never gave another interview, never spoke publicly about her husband's death again. When questioned one final time by detectives before leaving town, she simply said, "He had secrets. I just didn't want to know what they were." With no evidence to charge anyone, the case was closed. But unofficially, detectives kept wondering, who was Daniel talking to that night? Was he paying someone to help him? Or paying someone to disappear? Was the woman at the motel working for him or against him? The hollow oak tree still stands on that rural back road. Drivers occasionally stop to take photos, drawn by local. Legends about the man who drove straight into it and died without explanation. Daniel Harris left behind a trail of secrets, unanswered questions, and a family shattered by mystery. His story ended against that tree, but the truth behind his death may still be out there, waiting in silence, just like his phone inside the tree. Daniel Harris had always looked like a man in control. From the outside, everything about his life, seemed secure. He had a steady job as a project manager in a mid-sized firm, a comfortable house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and a small family that fit the picture of a normal life. His wife Sarah was known for her calm and graceful demeanor, and together they had 2 young daughters who often played in the front yard after school. Neighbors saw Daniel as responsible, quiet, and hardworking. But what no one saw was that Daniel's perfect life had been crumbling for months. It began with silence. Small changes that Sarah noticed first. Conversations became shorter. Eye contact disappeared. Daniel came home later than usual, blaming work. He stopped making plans for weekends, stopped sitting with her after dinner, stopped asking about her day. Sarah tried to believe it was just stress. She told herself people changed, that marriages went through phases. But deep down, she sensed something worse. By late summer of 2022, Daniel wasn't pretending anymore. He slept in the guest room 3 nights a week. He answered questions with single words. He avoided family dinners. Sarah asked him again and again what was wrong. His answer was always the same: nothing. That Sunday night was different. Sarah remembered the moment clearly. The girls were asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner. Daniel stood in the living room, his posture tense. He didn't pace or fidget. He just stood there still, like he had rehearsed what he was about to say. Then, without emotion, he told her he wanted a divorce, not in anger, not in frustration, but like a decision made long ago. Like reading from a script. He said he didn't love her anymore. He said there was nothing left to fix. Sarah felt the air drain from the room. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just listened. Somehow, part of her had known. But hearing it out loud felt like watching the stranger speak through her husband's face. Daniel didn't stay long after that. He went to the bedroom, packed a small black overnight bag, and walked out the front door without another word. She watched from the living room window as he climbed into his BMW, started the engine, and drove away. The red taillights disappeared down the quiet suburban street. She waited there long after the car was